Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the 7th edition of Ecosparity. This year's meeting makes a comeback after last year's gap. While COVID-19 is far from over, I'm pleased to see Ecosparity's first hybrid meetings done with a combination of in-person attendance with all of you here, and many more joining us virtually from around the world. This event will explore new ideas and forge partnerships as we seek to tackle another big crisis confronting humanity, the looming climate emergency. Even as countries learn to cope with the health and economic crisis arising from the pandemic, we must step up our efforts against climate change, or should I say, climate emergency. The situation on the climate front is accelerating in 3 areas. First, every community is feeling the negative effects of changing climate, and they are accelerating with more serious weather-related events costing lives and livelihoods. All these ones of worse to come if we do not act fast. The second acceleration is action. Growing sustained actions being led by corporates, governments, and even citizens worldwide, focusing on more eco-friendly lifestyles, policies, and practices. It is a good start, but there needs to be more, and it must be faster. The third acceleration is the development of more sustainable technologies that mitigate climate change and its effects. More capital is being deployed to bring them to scale, to market, and ultimately to fruition. The report by the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, confirms that climate change is accelerating past the point of no return. The report was described as code red for humanity. It is a stark reminder that unless we take action to save our planet, we may face catastrophes during our lifetime that are at least on par with, or be worse than, the human impact of COVID-19. It makes for grim reading. It may also be our last reminder to accelerate our collective efforts to do good for our planet. This leads me to the second acceleration: greater commitments and a momentum for action. We see many more organizations pledging to embed climate change and sustainability as part of their corporate strategy. They recognize the strategic role in preserving and creating long-term sustainable value. Organizations that don't will suffer value erosion, be left behind, and may not survive. More are pledging emissions reductions, committing to net zero goals, and accelerating their efforts. Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Singapore's own Green Plan 2030, which builds upon decades of work seeded by its first plan in 1992, underscores our commitment to develop, refine, and act on climate action blueprint. We must accelerate the pace of bold, proactive actions to address climate change, to drastically reduce carbon emissions, and to make the global net zero ambition a reality. At the individual level, I know many of you have made personal commitments to conservation and other environmental initiatives or sacrifices. whether it's more sustainable proteins in your diet or using devices that save water and energy, no effort is too small. Going forward, we need these actions to catalyze others. While no effort is too small, even the biggest efforts won't be enough unless multiplied. The pace at which sustainable solutions are being developed and brought to market is accelerating. Technology and innovation are key. The human spirit of ingenuity often comes to the fore when we face our greatest challenges. COVID underscores this point. It took us 50 years to come up with a vaccine for polio, yet we had multiple viable candidates for COVID inside a year. I choose to be an optimist that science, innovation, and the human entrepreneurial spirit can combine to help us find solutions to some of the greatest challenges causing our planet to warm. Early-stage technologies pioneered by startups with no track record are now sourcing capital from serious investors, taking a long-term view to fund stages of development. Hot springs of innovation are bubbling up all over the world, attracting more patient, long-term capital than in past years. Solutions cover areas like food, energy, water, transportation, waste, materials, and urban living, sectors where capital can deliver real impact. We conceived Ecosperity in 2014 with a belief that economic prosperity must go hand in hand with our ecology. This vision brought together different stakeholders to share perspectives and experiences. From this sharing comes bold ideas and ultimately action. This year's Ecosperity will address topical issues under the banner of decarbonization and climate action, reimagining nature and resources, and sustainable investing and finance. These topics should help seed timely discussions and ideas as we tackle the climate emergency. My real hope is we catalyze these new ideas and that all of us leave Ecosperity 2021 making one new commitment to action. We all know some still question climate change. We can't afford to dismiss these folks or their beliefs. We must find better ways to inform, educate, persuade, and change mindsets so that people understand we are running out of time. The collective experience and wisdom gathered at Ecosperity can educate and inform, catalyze, and embolden, and critically drive to act. COVID has shown that the world can come together. However, let's not wait for the seas to rise to our ankles and knees, or for the climate crisis to show even worse effects before we act. We are way past a wake-up call. It's now all about what we are doing, individually, collectively, as companies or as states, to change. Climate is the most critical element of our shared collective future. We invest in the future we want. We invest in the future of our grandchildren. That's down to each and every one of us, now, tomorrow, and every day forward. I wish you all a successful and meaningful Ecosperity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lim. So well said. Thank you for opening up our session this morning with such positivity as an optimist, as you mentioned, and for giving us this opportunity to really come together and invest in that future that you speak of. We are also so very grateful, by the way. We have our guest of honor who is with us this morning. So please join me in welcoming the President of the Republic of Singapore, Mdm Halimah Yacob.
Mr. Lim Boon Heng, Chairman of Temasek Holdings, Ms. Ho Ching, Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Temasek Holdings, Mr. Dilhan Pillay Sandrasegara, Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Temasek International. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to everyone. It is my pleasure to join you here on the first day of Ecosperity Week 2021. A warm welcome to everyone tuning in virtually as well. Over the past year and a half, the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a significant toll on lives and livelihoods and disrupted the plans of many. It has also alerted us to other threats to our societies, including climate change. There will be dire consequences of inaction to such threats, which we can now see clearly. We are living amid a climate crisis, and its impact could potentially be more severe than this pandemic. I am glad that Ecosperity Week is back this year. Robust dialogues, agreed outcomes, and decisive actions are vital in our fight against climate crisis. Climate change will affect every region of the world. However, the effects on Southeast Asia risk being disproportionate. The Climate Economics Index by the Swiss Re Institute has warned that if no climate action is taken and temperatures rise by 3.2 degrees Celsius by mid-century, the GDP of ASEAN economies could be over a third smaller than what it would have been in a world without warming. The ASEAN region's long coastlines and heavily populated low-lying areas also make it particularly vulnerable to rising sea levels caused by global warming. Under a scenario of rise in sea level by 1 meter, at least 89 million people in the region would be living in zones at high risk of frequent coastal flooding. Typhoons and other weather events are becoming more intense and more frequent and leave a higher human and economic toll. Singapore is not immune to the effects of climate change. The Center for Climate Change Research in Singapore has projected that by the end of the century, daily mean temperatures could rise by up to 4.6 degrees Celsius. Daily peak temperatures hitting 40 degrees Celsius could happen as early as 2045. We are already experiencing the effects. 4 out of the past 6 years were among the top 10 warmest years ever recorded in Singapore. Intense rainfall has also caused more flash floods. Climate change will begin to affect our access to critical resources like energy, water, and food. It will negatively impact our biodiversity and pose severe implications for public health. We have a collective responsibility to take action today to protect what we have and safeguard the interests of future generations. Sustainability has always been a cornerstone of Singapore's development story. As the country industrialized post-independence, we did so with sustainability in mind. Even as we built public housing, pursued manufacturing investments, and developed our professional services sector, we planted trees along our roads, cleaned up the Singapore River, and set aside nature reserves. As a small nation with no natural resources, we turned our challenges into opportunities so as to create a sustainable future. We went from being water scarce to being able to recycle every drop of water, establishing Singapore as a world leader in water resource management, innovation, and planning. As Singapore urbanized rapidly and transformed from third world to first, we kept a focus on our natural surroundings. From the 1960s, when we were known as the Garden City, to today, where we aim to be a city in nature, as we have always strived to balance economic development with environmental protection and social inclusion. The Singapore story is testament to the fact that sustainability and economic growth need not be mutually exclusive. The key attributes remain the same: to preserve and improve the livability of our city through long-term planning and embracing nature. That belief is also captured in the name of this event, Ecosperity, which pairs the words ecology and prosperity. While climate change can result in catastrophic and irreversible damage, it also presents both an opportunity and responsibility for businesses to help humanity transform. Emerging technologies have enabled dramatic business model transformations. New industries are rapidly growing from opportunities and solutions. For instance, at least 2/3 of global car sales will be electric by 2040. The alternative proteins market will reach at least US $290 billion by 2035. According to the International Labour Organization, a shift to a greener economy could create 24 million jobs globally by 2030. There is immense economic value in the transition to a net zero future. A strong and robust public-private people partnership is essential to combat climate change effectively for a more sustainable future. The Singapore Green Plan 2030 is a whole-of-nation agenda that charts Singapore's roadmap for sustainable development over the next decade. It will require the collective action of all stakeholders to capture the opportunities, as well as meet the challenges of our transition to a net zero future. To facilitate that, the Singapore government has kick-started the Green Plan conversations this year to engage Singaporeans from diverse backgrounds to seek their views and generate ideas for climate action to be realized through ground-up initiatives and collaborative platforms such as the Alliances for Action. As we transition to a greener economy, it is also important that our workforce is not left behind. The decarbonization movement coincides with a rapidly digitized and intelligent world, with the advent of Industry 4.0. This change, although vital, adds to the disruptions faced by workers as their companies and working environments undergo major transformations. Some traditional jobs will become redundant even as new ones are created. Are we doing all we can to help these workers transition? In Singapore, we hope to do this by developing and deepening their skills to support the green economy and our energy transition. For example, the Singapore Management University and Imperial College Business School collaborated to launch the Singapore Green Finance Center, which will develop capabilities in climate science, financial economics, and sustainable investing. Investing in upskilling our existing workers so that they can pivot to the new opportunities is a responsibility that extends beyond government and requires cooperation from business, labor organizations, and individuals. At the same time, we have to train our younger generation so that we have a pipeline of future-ready talent for our green economy. Halting and reversing climate change is part of our fight to secure our children's future. According to a UNICEF report launched last month, approximately 1 billion children, nearly half of the world's 2.2 billion children, live in countries identified to be at extremely high risk of impact of climate change. Future generations will have to live with the increasingly dangerous, even catastrophic consequences of rising temperatures and nature loss. One of Singapore's defining characteristics in its brief history has been its willingness and commitment to act today with tomorrow in mind. This mindset has become all the more important in dealing with the climate crisis. Some may wonder how much can be done to influence wider global behavior, especially by a small nation like Singapore. We believe climate change is a global problem that needs to be addressed with a multilateral, rules-based approach. Singapore participates actively in global climate negotiations. We can play our part as a fair broker in forging consensus at international discussions on climate change. I am confident that what we do here in Singapore does matter and can influence others. As the saying goes, a society grows when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. We need to both figuratively and literally plant these trees. We are called to rise to this challenge. What we do today will have a great impact on our children and future generations to come. What we do today can make a positive difference. This is our collective responsibility in stewarding our planet. As leaders of businesses, communities, governments, or civil society groups, we need to imagine a more sustainable future and help one another to achieve it. Many companies around the world are leveraging innovation and technology to make that sustainable future a reality. I know many of you here present represent such companies. Today, I am pleased to launch a mini documentary produced by Temasek in partnership with Mediacorp called Climate Trailblazers, Reimagining Our Future. This documentary helps all of us to reimagine what that sustainable future could look like and celebrate those who are seeking to achieve it. All of us here will be the first to catch it. I warmly welcome the efforts put in by everyone here towards our shared vision of change needed to combat our climate crisis. All of us can play a part, so celebrating change makers is important. If their stories can catalyze others to action, you will have made an impact for the better. I commend the team at Temasek and all its partners who have supported the Ecosparity journey since 2014 for bringing people together around a shared vision. I hope this forum will lead to actions that help us manage this important global priority. May we all continue to work together and accelerate progress towards a more sustainable future for all, and turn our present challenges to future opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We sincerely appreciate that. I'd like to invite Mr. Boon Heng, please, Chairman of Temasek Holdings, to join you on stage for a moment. I believe he has something special here to present to you. What you are receiving here is actually a beautiful illustration of the marine marvel that is Neptune's Cup Sponge by Singaporean artists Justin C. and Lo Siang Yun. So beautiful story here because Neptune's Cup Sponge is shaped like a goblet, hence the name, and it can grow to over 1 meter high and wide, and it was first discovered in our waters in the early 1800s. We've now rediscovered it, and hopefully we can now see it flourish in our waters once again. Thank you very much, Madam President. We appreciate this. And Mr. Lim.